Everybody, welcome into Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. We're joined this week by David Ravelay, the Executive Director of Dearborn Port Commission. Thanks so much for being here. This time of year, I mean, y'all always busy, but this time of year more so.
We are. I mean, it's hot. The
I'll
the
take the heat and I'll take
the
the El
industry.
Nino, right?
Right.
But
I'll take that high pressure system as long as it keeps those storms out.
right.
But I heard in a couple of weeks we got to have a cold front. It's gonna get down to 92. So you better go home and wrap your pipes. Be ready for it. But uh, but happy to be here
Yeah.
as always.
Well, well, thanks. So let's talk about, as we always do, the HNC Bay and inland dredging. So what's our status of that?
All right. Well, as we discussed last time, we had a contract earlier in the year in the Bay, and they commenced on April 27th. They uh, they dredged from mile 4.4. The Gulf is zero, so as you come up, it counts. So 4.4 to mile 9.4, and it was completed May 14th. Thomas C had the huge vessel to get out, and we needed the full depth of the channel as good as we could get it, to get them out, and they got out. So that was really beneficial.
Did it help you dredge at all? Did it pull any stuff, any fluff with it?
No, well, they dredged the material. They were gone by the time the dredge went through. I mean, by the time the boat went through. But they didn't get everything. They had some areas that were right around 15 foot, which is our authorized depth. And so there's a second bid, and they're gonna open bids August 3rd, 2 days from now. The scope of work will be dredging the remainder of the bay between mile 2 and mile 11 to fully clean the channel. So we will have a completely 17 plus foot depth channel all from Cocodrie all the way to the Gulf. Um, and the duration should take about 60 days. So
And so when you're looking at that and you finish all of that work, you're still at the mercy of Mother Nature,
it's silting
right?
in as we speak. Okay,
Right.
it never stops. And depending on the weather patterns, there's a predominant east-west current, and it flows over the channel, and all the sediment just drops in. It's a sediment trap. So when you have volatile weather and churns up the Gulf a lot, you get a lot of sediment, and then it'll silt in.
When we have an El Nino, as we were just kind of talking about, which is wind shear a lot, and it usually comes from west to east. That doesn't affect the current at all going east to west.
No, that's really an upper atmosphere deal. But
Right.
I'm not a
No,
meteorologist.
no,
But
no. Yeah,
I
I know.
mean, it's a pattern that you get into, but you still have that predominant east-west flow
Right.
on the surface. So, and that's just caused by the regular weather, the thunderstorms, and everything that we get. So,
And then obviously, if we do get a storm, that can turn things
oh
up
yeah,
even more.
we a few years ago, one of them hit, and I forget the name of it. It was pretty popular, but it hit in Corpus Christi, I think, and it was a very powerful storm. But it silted in every channel from Corpus Christi all the way past us. It just silted everything in,
Wow.
and sometimes they'll hit right on us, and we won't. So you never know. It's just how the water
Yeah,
flows.
and I guess that was my original question, and I don't mean to get you off track here, but how long does that normally last? And I know you say it's already kind of starting
Well,
but
it's
how
still.
long will it? You've raised this money for years and years.
Well,
You get it done.
every year we dredge.
I
Once a
got
year we dredge, and sometimes twice a year one of our tenants or somebody in the industry has to have this depth to get out or get in, and it's a job creating
Right.
opportunity. We contact the Corps. They have a budget, and sometimes they'll dredge early. Sometimes they'll split it up into two contracts and dredge early with one and then late with the other. But the same time we dredged the bay, we started dredging the inland because we hadn't dredged that in a long time. But after Hurricane Ida, the Bubba Dove busted open because they had a higher differential on the inside than they did on the outside with the gate closed, and when it opened, it dug a 50-foot hole right on the south side of the gate, and all of that sediment just kind of got dispersed everywhere. So we had little patches and pockets of areas that were 14 feet, 13 feet, and that's the only time we dredged the northern section is when we have an incident like that. So that's the agency inland dredging that I'll go right into. We had Apollo Environmental at a 16-inch dredge. They were awarded a project in December of 22, and they completed it in June, almost the end of June in 23. The contract was a total of 300,000 cubic yards. They did 8.4, a total of 8.4 miles, and it was in segments, and or 44,500 foot in length. And so they completed it the end of June, and so we got a good clear channel on the inside. We got a good clear channel in the bay, so we're sitting pretty right now, but that could change. I mean, Timberlake Island is just kind of migrating to the west because of that east-west current, and it's falling in the channel, and that's right around mile 1 or 2, maybe 0 in that area. So we usually have a lot of issues right there. So that's something that we trying to get the Corps and CPRA to help us study it and put rocks there, okay, to hold the island in one place, and the sediment would just build up on the outside of the rocks, and eventually it would go around them. We're talking about maybe a 2-mile length of levee, of jetty. The total diameter of the bay is 11 miles. Okay, so a little trivia is that in 1937 the bay was only 2 miles in diameter. Okay, today it's over 11, and it continues to grow. And part of that reason is because of that east-west flow. I believe personally, I'm not a scientist, but I believe that if we put a jetty all the way across the bay on the east side of H&C, it'll keep the channel at its authorized depth, and it'll build up material on the west side of that jetty, okay? And it would cut the bay into two halves, and it would be a lot easier to manage. But I'm just a port director, and I'm not from Minnesota, and I don't have a PhD.
So at one time it was 2 miles
Yes,
long or width?
width, the diameter.
Okay, and now it's 11.
Now it's 11. It just tells you what's going on, okay? And because you have all of these high-powered scientists and researchers and everything else that use information that we don't even understand, that's why we are where we are, okay? If they had asked some local people, some Cajuns that live in this area, like myself, and we've been involved with it all of our lives, we'd have probably been a lot better off today. Okay, but they don't. We don't know what we're talking about.
So at one time you had what, banks? You had
Well,
land
it was
territory?
kind of marshy, swampy
Right.
area. I mean, it
But now
wasn't
it's open water
right.
for 11.
In fact, they studied the port, not even the port. It wasn't because in '37 they didn't have a port, but they had the navigation coalition, and they got reached out to some engineer in New Orleans to study it, and they were going to take the material that they dredged to dig the channel, okay, because the channel wasn't dug at the time, put it on the east side of the bank, and make a road all the way to the last island. Okay, that's what they were gonna. That they figured they could do that. I don't think they could have at the time, but if they had did something to protect that 2-mile diameter bay, it wouldn't be
Be a lot
11 mile.
different.
It wouldn't be 11 miles today.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's just man causes problems, and then when some men try to fix it, the ones that caused it won't let you because they want their problem to continue. I mean, that's really saying it the wrong way.
Sure. No, I know what you're saying. But I mean, it's the butterfly effect of, we levee off the Mississippi River, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we probably have a lot drier land down here now. I mean, everything would be built on stilts down here if we flooded every year from the Mississippi.
Right.
But
the land-
the land would be further
The
out.
elevation would get higher. Every time it floods, it leaves a couple of inches of sediment on the surface. That's how all of this was built. For the last 5,000 to 7,000 years, Lafourche Parish, Terrebonne Parish was built by the Mississippi River, by its flooding its banks. And when they stopped that, they channelized the flow. Now it just goes off the continental shelf, and now you hear about all of these diversions where they cut channels to get this fresh water and sediment. Even if it's just fresh water going into the marsh, it fertilizes the marsh and it keeps the salt water out.
Right.
Okay, and you always have oyster fishermen. Oysters like to be in a certain area where the salinity is a certain amount. Okay, and as things erode, those oysters move further in. They plant the beds further in because they can't survive in so if you did it all at one time, if you just all of a sudden did away with the levees, it would kill all the oysters.
Right.
So you can't do it. I mean, so you have to protect the environment. At the same time, you have to be smart on what you do, to keep it, keep what you need.
You're right.
So we got to protect everybody. The seafood is just as important as the industry. It's all economy, and we have to protect it all. But a lot of things that were done when they did the levees and all, they never dreamed that would
Sure.
happen.
No,
I
they
mean,
were
they didn't
trying
do
to
it.
protect
They didn't do it on purpose,
life
you know.
and life and home.
But it was a 1927 flood that flooded all the way to Alexandria,
Sure.
Marksville. That whole area flooded, including down here. That's when they really, the people. When people first settled, they all settled along the river.
Right.
That's where the economy, the food,
every major city's on the river.
yeah, everything was there, and they just didn't think it out long enough or whatever. But the people wanted the levees, I mean, everybody wanted the levees, but they didn't realize what it was going to do to everything else.
Yeah, and it was part of the jobs program, coming out
Yeah.
of the depression and all that. But I tell you, we got 30 seconds. But when you look at those levees and look what they built, even from that period, man, that's pretty impressive.
Oh, it is,
levee.
and I'm not faulting them. I
Right,
mean,
right.
I would have probably done the same thing at the time.
We didn't know it was going to
That's
get
right.
saltwater intrusion
Nope.
like we had. But yeah, that's our main issue when we're talking. We're still building land below Morgan City now,
Yep.
so it's continuing on.
Shortcut Canal is about a 3,000-foot channel that connects our slip to the Houma Navigation Canal. It's actually part of the old Bayou La Carpe, okay?
Right.
And so we have to keep that dredged as well, and it silts in a lot.
You had to take that big Thomasy boat through there,
Right. So prior to the boat sailing out, we awarded a project to Harbor Dredging, and they dredged. Let's see, we awarded a project on 4/20, which was April 20th, and completed it in June 2nd. So
6 weeks.
yeah,
So-
I mean it was a very small dredge. So we got it out and we got it dredged. They still drug bottom when they went through there, but we did the best we
Where's
could.
that boat now, by the way? Is it headed to Alaska?
I found out today it's either still going or it just went through the Panama Canal and headed to Alaska.
That's right.
Doing 18 knots, I heard. It's
That's amazing.
330-foot vessel, beautiful boat. man.
Beautiful boat. Yeah.
A lot of jobs.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you go down Industrial Boulevard and look to the right, you're like, whoa, is that Noah?
And that's why we have to keep that channel dredged, because those opportunities, I mean,
right.
you pick up a job like that creates, 1,000,000 man hours or whatever. I mean, that's a lot of work for our area,
economy, right.
Yes.
No,
So-
we need more like that.
and
for
we
sure.
got now we got the channel authorized to be deepened, and that's what we're going to get to that in a little bit, but we have to lower all the pipelines before we can deepen it 5 more feet.
I got you.
So
Okay. So the HNC surveys, and all your surveys are posted on the web.
they posted on the Corps website. I'm gonna read it out, but www.mvn.usac.army.mil/missions/navigation. So if you remember, you can remember all of that. Oh, there was some more I left out. /channel surveys. But I think if you just went to navigation, you went to the Corps
Google
site,
it,
you type in navigation, you should be able to work your way to the channel surveys.
All right. So what does that mean?
That's where when the Corps several times a year the Corps runs a hydro boat from top to bottom, and they survey and they post those depths online. So if you got a boat and you're coming in and you want to see how deep it is, you go to that website and you pull them up and you can see if there's any shallow areas.
Is that standard practice for most captains when they're driving a boat that big?
Most of them look at charts, but the charts change so fast, and I think a lot of the industry knows our charts change. NOAA had some charts, and at one time when they developed the chart, they went out there and surveyed, and they had 10 feet of water. So that's what they put on the chart. So we were like, man, after a while, it's like, no, man, So we asked them to put 15-foot authorized, okay. So they did that. So now at least it says 15, and since I guess the last 5, 10 years, before that, the boats they needed less than 12 feet of water.
Right, and
The
bigger
the
boats.
bay is 12 feet deep. So even if the channel silted in and it was flush, they could still get out. But as the boats got bigger, we need every bit of that 15 feet today. And they even allow you to go what they call advanced maintenance. It's a 2-foot over dredge. So when when they dredge it to 17.
And the bigger boats that have been brought to this area, obviously excluding what Thomas just did with a fishing vessel that's 300 feet long, because they go in deep water now. They needed bigger boats.
Absolutely. And so, like, take La Ship, the Schwess, they build huge vessels, 300-foot supply boats right here in Houma, at their shipyard. And they actually float them out and bring them to Fouchon to outfit them, because if they totally outfitted them, they'd never be able to get out. And then once they out, they can't get back in. Okay, now once we get to 20 feet,
Right.
when we get it'll be 22 feet because they get that 2-foot over dredge. It'll be a lot better. But again, we're gonna always have to dredge. If we put those rocks on the east side of the channel,
Might help.
it'll hopefully keep the channel from silting in.
Right. But from the surveys, most things look good right now.
Everything looks good. We have the inland surveys. Everything's 15 feet or more. The bay survey, it has over 20 foot available. Let's see. Yeah, that's basically what we got. So, and the bar channel, which is from mile 0 to the Gulf, it's a 3-mile transition. We have a 23-foot authorized depth there, and right now the bar survey looks excellent. All depths are 18.7 to 22 feet. So everything is good today.
So you've received most of your money from 23, right? Fiscal year 23?
Right. We received, all of our money from the president's budget in fiscal year 23, and the 24 budget was released in March, and we have adequate funding for fiscal year 24, barring any hurricanes. Okay.
So let's go to the agency deepening process.
All right.
So I know that's a process.
Yeah, it's a long drawn out process. So we get that acronym that our favorite acronym LERDS, which is land easements, rights of ways, relocations, and dredge disposals. That's a local obligation. So the federal government will come in and dredge your channel, but they say, okay, but before we can do that, y'all have a local obligation to get all the right of ways, to make sure there's no pipelines, and then we'll fund it. Okay, so the state has agreed to pay that portion, which is probably going to be 60 or 70 million by the time we finished. Okay?
You found most of those, but now
In the
you gotta
bay,
bargain with everybody.
in
Oh,
the
I
bay,
got you.
okay, we found 12 of them in the bay that we need to address, but there's 40 or 50 of them going north of Cocodrie, but a lot of those are water lines, electric lines, sewer lines, so they're not nearly as complicated
expensive, right.
to lower, and not expensive. But on the pipelines in the bay, letters of intent was sent out to Hillcore, Connecticut, and Kinder Morgan to address a 36-inch, a 24-inch, and a 26-inch, and a few 6-inch pipelines, either lowering or removing, depending if they're not using them. They have to remove them. And
Those
then
will be oil.
oil, gas,
Right,
or any kind of fluids from the oil and gas industry. And so remaining letters of intent will go out to Chevron, Harvest Midstream, Shell, Talus, and TPIC. We also let's see, we received acknowledgement of the letters of intent from Kinder Morgan and Hillcore. So we're setting up meetings with them. We're reviewing the permits that they got to do them. So in those permits and right-of-way agreements, kind of spells out who's responsible for paying, okay, for the lowering, okay? So the oil companies actually do it with their contractors because they don't.
They do the actual lowering.
Yeah, they don't.
You guys may pay for it.
Right. They don't want anybody to touching their pipeline, so they have their selected contractors. So they take, when we say we gotta lower them, and we get an agreement with them, that means that we have the money from the state, a commitment from the state to pay that. Let's say if it's $3 million to lower the line, and we have the money with the state, so that's a commitment from the state. Then we sign a letter of commitment to the oil company. They hire a contractor, they go out there and lower it, and then they send us the invoice.
I got you.
So we pay it. But we did receive those letters of intent from Kinder Morgan and Hill Court, so we're working on that right now, and we should shortly thereafter receive them from the other ones. And we're continuing to research the right-of-way documents, the abstract info through the Terrebonne Parish Courthouse documents, Louisiana State Department of Lands, concerning the original pipeline right-of-ways, agreements, and permits, correlating to the various pipeline and utility crossings on the agency. So there's a lot of research that goes in, okay? Because these pipelines were put in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and so you got to go find all the documentation so that you know where you stand when it comes to negotiating with them. Um, so that's what's going on with the DP.
So I think you and I missed one of these shows, but 2 times ago you were headed to Washington.
Yes, I did. Yes.
And how was the trip to Washington? What's happening in Washington these days? With politicians all running for something?
It's busy.
or
It's
from
it's a zoo. I think I walked 7 miles in one day, just inside buildings. You know, that's how big those buildings are. But we continue to work on our federal delegations for funding opportunities. What's going on in D.C. today is Congress departed this week, July 28th, to enter their August recess. The Senate returned September 5th, and the House of Representatives is returning September 12th. On most July periods, this past month was very busy in D.C. Like I told you, it's a zoo, if you ask me. Typically focused on appropriation measures and other big bills, hoping to be completed before the end of the year. So when they come back in the fall, they're going to be working on like defense authorization bill. But as the country suffers from the high temperatures, DC suffers from quick burning fuses and short tempers. So it's a lot of headbutting, and large bills carry large stakes. But this year feels different. Maybe it's because the next year's presidential campaign is underway earlier than ever, and because politics have become hyper partisan.
It's a great way to make money.
Oh yeah. One of the leading Democrat candidates, Robert Kennedy Jr., appeared before the House Judiciary Committee with Republicans coming to his defense, but Democrats didn't. Okay, so because he's running against Biden, so
Kennedy from Massachusetts.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
Republicans are fine.
Yeah, so they tried to cancel him, and so anyway. But as Congress returns in the fall, the key issues are that we look to advance and complete is appropriations bill. It's due by October 1st, or the government shuts down. Okay, we back into that because that's where they punted it to back then. So we'll leave it at there, and we can discuss the rest of it on my next visit.
For sure, man. Always enlightening. We appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Dave.
All right. Glad we had it.
That's David Rabelais, Executive Director of the Terrebonne Port Commission. We'll be back with more Going Public next time.